What just happened after the French Open final has the entire tennis world buzzing. Aryna Sabalenka didn't just lose to Coco Gauff, she lost her cool. And now a shocking leak from her own coach, Anton Dubrov, has exposed what was really said behind closed doors. And let's just say, it's not the kind of conversation you'd expect from a world-class athlete. The French Open was supposed to be Sabalenka's redemption story. She came in as the favorite, full of confidence, ready to dominate. But when things started to fall apart, that calm, controlled version of Sabalenka disappeared. What followed wasn't just a loss, it was a full emotional unraveling. And now, thanks to Dubrov, we know what actually went down after that match. He's revealed private details from the locker room, what she said, who she blamed, and how bad it really got. Some fans are calling him honest. Others say it's pure betrayal. So here's the question everyone's asking. Should a coach ever reveal what happens in private? Or did Anton Dubrov just expose the truth that Sabalenka didn't want the world to see? Because behind those locker room doors, something happened that no one expected. And now the truth is finally out. Heading into the French Open final, Aryna Sabalenka looked unstoppable. She'd bulldozed through the draw, playing some of the most powerful, fearless tennis we'd seen all season. Analysts were calling it her tournament to lose. This was supposed to be her redemption, the moment she finally silenced the critics and claimed the crown that slipped away in Australia. But once the match began, it was clear something was off. Across the net stood Coco Gauff, calm, locked in, and completely unfazed by Sabalenka's reputation. From the very first rally, Coco looked ready for a war, and Sabalenka looked like she was fighting herself. Every serve came with a grunt that sounded more like frustration than focus. Every unforced error drew that sharp glare, not at her opponent, but at her own team box. And the crowd could feel it, the tension, the unease, the storm building point by point. By the second set, the power that usually crushed opponents was betraying her. Shots that normally found the lines were flying long, drop shots dying in the net. Coco stayed composed, while Sabalenka's body language screamed panic. She wasn't just losing the match, she was losing control. And when the final point ended, the stadium roared for Coco Gauff, the new champion. Sabalenka barely looked at her before walking off the court, her jaw tight, eyes cold. You could tell this wasn't just a loss. It was a breakdown in real time. The moment the final ended, Sabalenka couldn't wait for the cameras. No extra handshake, no smile for the photographers. She grabbed her bag and stormed off the court, her expression saying everything her press conference later would try to hide. Anger, frustration, embarrassment. Behind the scenes, it wasn't much calmer. According to people inside the player area, Sabalenka went straight to the locker room, slammed her racket bag down, and refused to speak to anyone. Reporters were already whispering, "Something's not right," and they were right. That's where Anton Dubrov comes in, her longtime coach, her closest ally. He's been with her through everything, the early struggles, the emotional outbursts, the triumphs. He's defended her when the media tore her apart, backed her when critics called her unstable, and always kept her private moments private. But this time, he didn't. For years, he kept her secrets. But after Paris, Dubrov broke his silence. He revealed that inside that locker room, Sabalenka completely unraveled. She was pacing back and forth, replaying points out loud, blaming herself, the conditions, even her own energy levels. At one point, he said she just sat on the floor, still in her match gear, whispering, "How did I let this happen again?" It wasn't anger anymore. It was disbelief, the kind of emotional collapse you don't expect from someone ranked #1 in the world. And that's what shocked everyone. Not the loss, not even the outburst, but the fact that her own coach, the one who always protected her, decided to tell the world. To really understand Sabalenka's meltdown, you have to look at what was building up long before the French Open final. Because this collapse didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs were there, and her team saw them coming. In the months leading up to Roland Garros, Sabalenka had been running on fumes. She'd played non-stop since the start of the season. Tournaments, travel, media, training, with barely a pause. Her fitness coach, Jason Stacy, had quietly mentioned that she'd been battling exhaustion, even a viral illness right before the tournament. But Sabalenka, she refused to slow down. That's just who she is. She's wired to fight through pain, through pressure, through anything that makes her look weak. And that's where the danger lies, because the same intensity that makes her one of the most feared players on tour is also what breaks her. When things start to slipping, she doesn't just lose a point, she loses herself. Her team reportedly warned her, "You need rest, you're pushing too hard." But Sabalenka pushed back harder. She wanted to prove she could handle everything. The spotlight, the expectations, the critics who said she couldn't stay mentally strong in big moments. She wanted to prove she was in control. Except in Paris, that control vanished. And when it did, all that pressure, months of exhaustion, frustration, and mental fatigue came crashing down in one match. So when Dubrov revealed that breakdown in the locker room, it wasn't just about a bad day. It was a symptom of something much bigger. Burnout that had been hiding behind power and confidence for months. But what he revealed next would turn that private emotion into a public storm. Now here's where everything changed. Up until this point, Sabalenka's team had kept her private moments just that, private. But this time, Anton Dubrov decided to speak. And what he revealed wasn't just emotional, it was shocking. According to Dubrov, moments after the final, Sabalenka told him something that stunned everyone in the room. She said, "I lost control again. Maybe I'm not built for finals." Let that sink in for a second. Those words didn't come from a struggling rookie. They came from a Grand Slam champion, a former world #1, someone known for her fire and dominance. He described how she sat on the locker room floor, still in her match gear, replaying points out loud, criticizing herself for every mistake, every unforced error, every bad decision. He said she wasn't even angry at Coco Gauff. She was angry at herself. She felt like she had let everyone down, her team, her fans, and most of all, herself. But here's where it gets messy. He said he didn't reveal this to embarrass her. He did it to show her humanity, to remind people that behind that powerful serve and fierce attitude is a player who breaks just like anyone else. Except that's not how fans took it. The internet blew up. Some called Dubrov's comments brave, saying he gave us an honest look at what athletes really go through. Others said he betrayed her, exposing her most vulnerable moment to the world. And honestly, both sides have a point, because whether he meant it or not, that leak turned a private emotional breakdown into a global headline. But if you think that was the end of the drama, you're wrong, because the media took that leak and spun it into something even bigger. The moment Anton Dubrov's comments hit the internet, it was chaos. Within hours, sports outlets, gossip blogs, and tennis fan pages were all over it. Headlines read, "Coach exposes Sabalenka's locker room meltdown. Coco broke her mentally. Sabalenka admits she's not built for finals." Clips of the French Open final flooded social media again. But this time, people weren't analyzing the game, they were dissecting her emotions. Slow-motion replays of her facial expressions, her body language, her short handshake with Coco. Every frame was turned into a theory. And then came the worst part, the quotes she made right after the match. Remember when Sabalenka said Coco didn't win because she played incredible, but because of the conditions and her own mistakes? Yeah, that line aged terribly. Fans saw it as disrespect. Commentators called it ego. Former players said, "Lose with class." And with Dubrov's leak now circulating, it only made her look worse. Like she couldn't handle defeat on or off the court. The backlash was brutal. Social media turned into a battlefield. Half the comments were angry, calling her a sore loser. The other half defended her, saying the media was twisting everything, that she was just emotional and human. Through it all, Sabalenka stayed silent. No interviews, no social posts, just quiet. And that silence, it spoke volumes. Because while everyone was tearing her apart, Coco Gauff didn't say a single word. She didn't need to. Her performance already did the talking.
And that calm, classy silence from Coco, it made Sabalenka's meltdown look 10 times worse. If the French Open final proved anything, it's that pressure reveals who you really are. And the contrast between Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka couldn't have been clearer. While Sabalenka was unraveling, Coco stayed calm, almost unnervingly calm. No fist pumps, no screaming, no drama. Just quiet confidence and laser focus. She looked like someone who'd already seen the script and knew exactly how it would end. Even after the win, Coco didn't gloat, didn't take shots, didn't clap back at Sabalenka's comments. She smiled, thanked her team, congratulated her opponent, and walked off the court like a champion who didn't need to prove anything. That's the kind of composure that wins fans and sponsorships. Meanwhile, Sabalenka's emotions were everywhere. Her body language screamed frustration. Her post-match comments fueled controversy, and her coach's leak poured gasoline on the fire. It became the perfect contrast. Coco, the face of composure, Sabalenka, the symbol of chaos. And the media loved it. You could almost feel them framing it like a movie. The calm prodigy versus the fiery powerhouse. Coco became the hero, the young queen of control. Sabalenka became the cautionary tale, the player who let emotion overpower talent. But here's the thing, that contrast is exactly what makes this story so powerful. Coco represents everything modern tennis fans adore: poise, maturity, grace. Sabalenka represents raw emotion, unpredictable, human, and flawed. Two completely different energies that collided on the biggest stage in tennis. And while Coco walked away with the trophy, Sabalenka walked away with something heavier, the weight of her own reputation. But this story wasn't done, because what Dubrov said next didn't just spark debate, it questioned the ethics of coaching itself. After Anton Dubrov's words went public, the tennis world split right down the middle. Because this wasn't just about a player's meltdown anymore, it became a question of loyalty, privacy, and trust. Should a coach ever talk about what happens behind closed doors? Or does a moment of honesty become betrayal when it exposes someone at their lowest? For years, Dubrov has been Sabalenka's inner circle, her mentor, her emotional anchor. He's seen every side of her, the fighter, the champion, and yes, the one who loses control. So when he spoke about her breakdown, fans didn't know what to make of it. Was he helping her image, showing that even world number ones struggle mentally? Or was he crossing a line that no coach should ever cross? Tennis is an intimate sport. Players and coaches share everything, from strategy to stress, from triumph to tears. That bond is built on absolute trust. So when that trust gets tested in public, it shakes the entire system. And then there's the other side of this story, the double standard. Because let's be honest, if a male player had smashed a racket or shouted at his team, the headlines would have called him passionate, intense, or driven. But when a woman shows that same fire, she's labeled unstable, emotional, or out of control. It's a narrative that women athletes have been fighting for decades. So when Dubrov's leak went viral, it didn't just expose Sabalenka's emotions, it reignited the conversation about how the tennis world views women who show them. Was she being human, or was she being dramatic? Depends who you ask. Either way, the damage was done. Sabalenka's private words were now public property. And suddenly, the player who built her career on power and control was facing the one thing she couldn't control, her own story. But what happened next might just show that even after the chaos, Sabalenka isn't finished yet. When the noise finally faded, the headlines, the outrage, the endless debates, one thing was clear. Aryna Sabalenka is still one of the most powerful, fearless players on the planet. But she's also human. That French Open final didn't just expose her weaknesses, it exposed her humanity. For the first time, the world saw the side of Sabalenka that isn't screaming after a forehand or lifting trophies. They saw the person who feels the pressure, who fights herself as much as she fights her opponents. And as for Anton Dubrov, he didn't just spark a media frenzy, he sparked a conversation, one that goes beyond tennis, about mental pressure, trust, and the fine line between being honest and being disloyal. Since then, Sabalenka has reportedly started working with a sports psychologist, rebuilding her confidence from the inside out. No quotes, no drama, no headlines. Just quiet work behind the scenes. Because sometimes, silence says more than any post-match interview ever could. Meanwhile, Coco Gauff continues to rise. Calm, graceful, composed. Two players walking two completely different paths. One rebuilding, one rising higher than ever. And maybe that's what makes this story so fascinating. Because tennis isn't just about who hits harder, it's about who handles the storm better. And in Paris, Sabalenka faced a storm she created herself. So here's the real question. Did Anton Dubrov cross the line by revealing her private words? Or did he simply show the world the truth behind every champion's facade? Either way, one thing's for sure. That night in Paris didn't end on match point. It ended in the locker room, where the cameras weren't rolling, but the story was just beginning.